do a video on a little pregnancy recap. Now that I am nearing the end of my pregnancy journey, I wanted to kind of recap it, the highs, the lows, the differences between this pregnancy and Junie's pregnancy, and like my expectations versus reality, that sort of thing. And I also wanted to talk about my expectations for birth and my birth plan, what I'm hoping for, what I want to do, differently than I did last time. So starting with my pregnancy experience, wow, what is there to even say? I mean, at this point, I truly cannot remember what it's like to not be pregnant. I have been pregnant for so long, and I found out that I was pregnant at like 3 weeks, so very, very early. That being said, at the same time, it's kind of flown by. Like, I can't believe I'm already here at the end. Overall, this pregnancy has been easier and harder than my pregnancy with Junie. It's been easier mentally, which I'm very, very grateful for. I struggled a lot mentally during my pregnancy with Junie, a lot of anxiety. I struggled with depression. I had very frequent panic attacks. I had days where I just could not get out of bed. It was just not a good time for me mentally pretty much my entire pregnancy with Junie. So I was really nervous going into this pregnancy that was going to be the case for me again, but luckily that has been a lot better this time. I definitely have my ups and downs, but overall it's been a lot better than it was with Junie. Physically, however, this one has been a doozy. I literally have not slept since becoming pregnant. Like, first trimester, right off the bat, I started having all of these hip and joint issues and pain. And I went to a chiropractor for a while, hoping that would make it better. And it unfortunately has just gotten a lot worse, causing me to be very uncomfortable and not sleep very well at night. That has been very unfortunate, and I feel like I'll be, in the midst of a breakdown, and I'm just like, if I could sleep, if I could get a good night's sleep, I would feel like a totally different person. Just with all of my joint pain, I'm having to, resituate every hour at least. I feel like on average, I probably am waking up 10 times a night, and then 2 or 3 of those I'm having to get out of bed to go pee. And then it's like a 50-50 shot if I'm going back to sleep or not. I've had so many nights, I feel like at least once or twice a week, I'll have a night where I'm just wide awake for at least an hour in the middle of the night. And I'll just be making a list on my phone, or I'll be looking something up, or I'm just wide awake. That's been rough. Also, I have just gotten bigger this time. My belly, I don't really feel like I've gained weight all over more than last time, but my belly specifically is just bigger than it was with Junie, and this baby is measuring a lot bigger than she is. So I think because of that, I've had just more joint pain, and I've been more uncomfortable, more out of breath. I feel like he just takes up more of my belly. And now that I'm in my 3rd trimester, I don't have as big of an appetite because my belly just can't hold that much of food because it's so full of baby. And my lung capacity, all of those things have just been restricted. Physically, this one has been rough. I'm ready for it to be over. Another aspect with this pregnancy that I of course didn't have last time is I have a toddler running around while being pregnant. So it's not like I can just lay on the couch if I want to. So that's been an added layer of chaos, is just not being able to rest, when my body is telling me, hey, you really need to rest. Well, too bad, I have a 2-year-old. I feel like it's also been a really nice thing to have a toddler during being pregnant, just as a distraction. I feel like maybe that's why I struggled a little bit more mentally last time, was I just had the freedom to kind of get in my head more because I had more alone time and just more time to think. But now I'm just so busy, and it's kind of nice to have a distraction all day every day, and it keeps you from worrying about things or getting anxious about things or worrying about your body. While Junie has added so much chaos to this pregnancy and limited my ability to rest, I'm thankful for the joy she has brought me throughout this whole process, and the distraction and that sort of thing. And then I feel like the last thing I'll say about my pregnancy this time, especially versus last time, is this time I have no worries. as far as this baby coming, I am not really very nervous about giving birth. I'm not really nervous about going to the hospital. I'm not really nervous about my ability to take care of him, what to do, what not to do. Obviously, being a second-time mom, I have done all of this before and I kind of know what to expect. That has been super nice, like just not really having a whole lot of worries. And with Junie becoming a big sister, I think she's gonna be a great big sister. Everyone's asking me all the time, like, you know, are you nervous about Junie becoming a big sister? Honestly, no. We talk about it all the time. I feel like we've done a really good job of preparing her as much as we can before baby brother gets here. And she's very responsible. She's very independent. She's very sweet and loving. I think she's gonna be a great big sister. I know it'll be an adjustment for her just like it will be for all of us, but I'm not really worried about it. So just in general, I'm a lot more carefree and worry-free this time around, which has been very nice. Okay, now I kind of want to go into my expectations for birth, or my birth plan, because it is very different from my experience last time. I'll give a quick rundown of my experience giving birth to Junie, because I feel like it plays a really big role in how I want this birth to go. Basically, when I was 38 weeks pregnant with Junie, I went into my 38-week appointment and my doctor did the routine cervical check, and I had some bleeding afterwards. So they wanted to do an ultrasound. So we did an ultrasound right away, and they thought in the ultrasound that Junie looked a little small for how big she should have been at that point. So they were worried about growth restriction and worried that she, might not be growing as well as she could in my belly. So they decided to schedule an induction for like 3 or 4 days later. I go home and they call me that afternoon and like, actually, we were looking over your ultrasound again and your fluid levels are a little low, so we want to induce you tonight. So I was not prepared at all. I didn't have my hospital bag packed. I had things still in boxes. Like, I was not ready, but had to be ready all of a sudden. We packed our hospital bags and we went in that night. And I'm kind of glad that it happened that way, just because I was so terrified of giving birth and I just did not know what to expect at all. I think if it would have gone on any longer, I would have just gotten in my head about it more and become like so stressed and anxious. So I'm kind of glad that it just like happened all of a sudden, because it was just so crazy. I couldn't even think about how scared I was. I was just like trying to get everything together. But it was very chaotic. So I went in that night at like 10 p.m. and then I was started on medication around midnight to start inducing me, and I didn't end up giving birth until about 6 p.m. the next day. So I did labor for a really long time. So it was just a very long process. I got my epidural really early, which I was very thankful for. So I was not in very much pain or super uncomfortable. It just was like a long and drawn out process, because I mean, it makes sense. My body in theory was not ready to go into labor. So, you're induced and you're taking this medication that forces your body to go into labor. So it takes a while, I feel like. That's basically a short version of my birth story with Junie, and she ended up being fine. Also, like, my fluid was fine and she was a normal size. So it all ended up being okay. Kind of a crazy way to come into the world. Because of that, I kind of have a few different things I want to do this time around. The first thing that I'm doing is I'm denying all of my cervical checks. So I was supposed to start getting them last week, or actually the week before, and I've denied them, which I didn't even know that you had a right to do that. I mean, it makes sense. It's your body. You can, say yes or no to anything. I heard of someone else who was doing that, and I was like, wait, I want to do that too. At this point, denying all of my cervical checks, I just don't really have a desire to know if my body is progressing at all. I feel like it would just make me really anxious, and it's kind of information that is somewhat useless. If you're dilated, you could be dilated for weeks before you go into labor. As long as my doctor is okay with it and she doesn't have a reason for concern, I am not getting those at this point. The next thing is I really don't want to be induced this time, and I told my doctor and she is aware of that. So we're going to try everything in our power to allow me to go into labor naturally on my own. So I'm really hoping he stays in a lot longer than Junie did. I'm hoping he makes it closer to his due date, or even after his due date, just because I want him to come on his own terms. I just feel like last time being induced, like I said, the process just lasted so long and it was so drawn out, and I would really just love for him to be able to come in on his own and for my body to just do its thing and start the process naturally. But we'll see if I get my wish or not. Also this time I will be getting an epidural. I got an epidural last time and I loved it. I was like so chill, just like watching TV for hours, no pain, no discomfort. So I loved my experience with the epidural. It was actually one of the easiest parts of the entire thing. People are so scared of getting it. And I don't know, for me, it was like a breeze. It was not painful. It was just so easy and the best thing ever. I plan on getting it as soon as I get to the hospital and am in labor. Everything else as far as birth goes, I don't really have any other requests. I just feel, like I said about, you know, being pregnant, I just feel a lot more chill this time. Like I know last time I was so like stressed, like right after Junie was born, like, is she okay? I was like waking up and staring at her all the time, like just so nervous that something was gonna happen to her. And I know I will feel those things again, but I think overall I'll just be a lot more chill with baby boy and like trust the process and trust that, you know, he's okay, he's gonna be okay. You don't have to worry about like every single little thing. So I think that'll be a lot better this time around. I do plan on breastfeeding this time. I did with Junie last time. I breastfed and exclusively breastfed her through 15 months, which is a long time. So this time I don't really have, last time I wanted to make it as long as possible and I wanted to make it like at least a year, and I just had a lot of these like things in my head that I wanted to do. But this time I'm not really putting like a time limit on it. I know that I just want to try and we'll see how long we make it. I feel like I'm in a much better place going into breastfeeding this time. Last time I did not know what I was doing at all and I had a really hard time with it. I feel like it took me like literally 2 months before getting in a good groove with it, and I absolutely hated it and I wanted to quit every single day of those first 2 months. In hindsight, I'm really glad that I stuck with it. This time I just feel like I know, you know, so much more and I know what I'm doing a little bit better. So I'm hoping for a more seamless breastfeeding journey. I also, while I want to breastfeed, I also want to introduce baby boy to formula earlier. I never introduced Junie to a drop of formula, which was fine, but I just had this fear of like, oh my gosh, what if she needed to take formula for some reason, like she wouldn't be able to, like how would she react to it? And I just don't really want that like fear in the back of my mind this time. So I do plan on introducing formula to baby boy early on and maybe mixing it with my milk or whatever, just so that if I'm like away from him for longer than I planned, like he can be given formula and be all right. I do plan on pumping, so hopefully I'll have some like stored milk as well, but I just don't want to solely rely on that. With a bottle, I introduced Junie to a bottle within the first 2 weeks of her being born, and that was a game changer because she took the bottle so well. So I had no issues like leaving her with anyone else or giving William a bottle to give her, and that made things so much easier and better for us and gave me like a lot more freedom. So I definitely plan on doing that again this time, introducing a bottle probably within those first 2 weeks. I think that's it as far as breastfeeding goes. And then I just have a few like boundary things I'm going to be doing this time. On the one hand, Junie was very much a COVID baby. Like we had her during peak COVID season, so I was really particular about who she was around and the protocols we had in place when people were visiting her. So I'm not so worried about that this time around. I did have this pressure of like, you know, having family over immediately after to meet her. We had lots of visitors in the hospital, like just meeting her right away, just because I felt like that's just what you do. That's what you have to do. That's part of it. You know, they're wanting to see her. They're asking me about it. But this time I just really like don't care. If I'm not comfortable with having people around, then I'm not gonna have people around, and I just really don't care because I mean, it's your choice. It's your baby. It's your body. Like you just went through something so traumatic, and it's so like the recovery is just insane, and I feel like you should only do what you're comfortable with. So this time, William and I have already said that we are not having any visitors in the hospital, which I think will be good because that really stressed me out last time. And then once we get home from the hospital, we will decide when we feel comfortable having people around to come meet him, and are just gonna try to do things more on our terms and not like feel this pressure of having people around during those first couple of weeks, because they're just so precious and it goes by so fast. and it's such just a big time, and especially having another baby already, having Junie, like I just really want to take that time as a family and adjust in our own way, on our own time, before adding other people into the mix. I'd encourage you as well, if you're thinking like, man, I wish I could do that, or I wish I could like say no to visitors or whatever, just say no. Like, everyone will be okay, I promise. And it's just like, this is one of the biggest moments of your entire life. You should be able to do it however you feel comfortable. And especially as a mom, like, you know what's best for you and your baby, and just go with your gut and do whatever you're comfortable with, and don't worry about anything else. That was my little tangent, and I think that's all I have to say at this point. I am almost 38 weeks pregnant, so I'm about to enter the same week that I had Junie, which is so crazy to think about. But we are at this point where, you know, I could have him at any point, which is so crazy. That's kind of why I wanted to do this video. I just wanted to take a second to document everything before things get like so crazy. I'll do a little bump update. So here's what we're looking like today. Bump is definitely bumping, and I feel it. But yeah, I think that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching.